It is Friday, the first hour of our program. Senator Bernie Sanders, our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you with us, sir. And curious your thoughts on the events of the last few weeks and where we go from here. And it's been an eventful month.
It has. There's a whole lot that's been happening. Let me review a very significant piece of legislation that passed the Congress against my vote, passed the Congress, the House and the Senate against my vote last week, and that is the $1 trillion appropriations bill. The argument for voting for that bill is a reasonable argument, is that nobody wants to see the government shut down, and the Republicans place the Democratic leadership in that take-it-or-leave-it position. On the other hand, there were too many bad things in that bill, really embarrassingly bad things, for me to support it. And there were three major concerns that I had, among many. Number one, what has not been widely discussed is that 60%, or a little bit less than 60% of that $1 trillion goes to the Defense Department. And I think as a nation, we have got to take a hard look at our national priorities. We have got to determine whether or not at a time our infrastructure is collapsing, families can't afford to send their kids to college. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty in the industrialized world. Our middle class is disappearing. Whether in the middle of all of that, we should be spending close to $600 billion a year on the military, which is almost as much as the rest of the world combined. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is in that bill, there was a provision which repealed a portion of Dodd-Frank financial regulation legislation, which basically said that the taxpayers of this country were never again going to bail out the financial institutions which engaged in risky derivative speculation. And that was repealed. And that particular provision was literally written by the folks at Citigroup. They wrote it, they got it into the bill, and now what happens is these guys are going to once again be investing in incredibly complicated, risky endeavors, and if they win, they make a lot of money, and if they lose, guess what? Taxpayers of America bail them out. I think that's totally absurd. And the third provision, which concerned me, also did not get a whole lot of discussion, is that language in that bill lays the groundwork for many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of American workers to see a significant reduction in the pensions that they were promised and in some cases are now receiving. So you have situations where somebody may have worked for a company for 20, 30, 40 years with a full understanding that he or she was going to be getting a pension, is getting that pension right now. And as a result of problems with the multi-employer pension funds around this country, suddenly they're going to see that pension significantly reduced. This kind of came upon Congress very quickly without sufficient discussion. We have to figure out how we deal with the pension problem in this country, but the answer is not simply to cut the pensions that were promised to workers. That is absolutely wrong. And what really bothers me is it sets a horrendous precedent, is that no matter what anyone says to you about what you're entitled to, that could be taken away at a moment's notice. So for those reasons, I voted against that piece of legislation. As I think most listeners and viewers know, the other day, President Obama, I think, did something that was absolutely right, long overdue, in terms of moving toward establishing normal diplomatic relations with Cuba. I was in Cuba 6-7 months ago, had the opportunity to meet with Alan Gross. Very glad to see that he has been released. Glad to see that the United States will be opening up an embassy in Havana and vice versa. I think we're in a situation where I'm talking to you right now is 1 hour away from the Canadian border. And in Canada, people want to go to Cuba to vacation, to shop. Businesses want to do business in Cuba. They're able to do it. Here in the United States, we are limited. We cannot, in most cases, travel to Cuba, and I think that's wrong. So I think the president's effort is a good effort, and I support it, and I hope that we make good progress in that area. Last point that I want to make is that now that the campaign is over, we are beginning to, of course, learn what the Republicans really want to do, which is certainly not what they talked about during the campaign. During the campaign, all they talked about was Obama, 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 and that he was responsible for every problem in the history of the world, not telling us what they wanted to do. And now, of course, we know what they want to do, which is certainly not a surprise to many of us. It's part of the Republican DNA, and that is to go after Social Security and go after Medicare and make devastating cuts to the programs that working families desperately need. I am the new chairman of the House Budget Committee, replacing Paul Ryan. It's a fellow named Congressman Price from North Carolina. He'll be chairman of the Budget Committee, and he made it very clear that one of his top priorities will be so-called entitlement reform, which in one form or another will mean major cuts to Social Security and Medicare. And they'll probably go back to what Paul Ryan did in his budget, which is to end Medicare as we know it, transforming it into a voucher system by which seniors will be given a check in which they can then go out to the private sector and try to buy insurance from a private insurance company. And you just think about what it would mean to somebody who's 75 years of age, who has a check and who is dealing with cancer or some other serious illness, and what kind of policy they're going to be getting from a private insurance company. And it will not be a very good policy, to say the least. In terms of Social Security, I'm not quite sure which approach they'll use. They may want to raise the retirement age. They may want to go to the chain CPI, which cuts back on cost of living adjustments. But whatever it is, at a time when millions of seniors are struggling on, $10, $12, $14,000 a year, when Social Security is a very, very important part of their total income. For many people, it is all of their income, or 90% of their income. It is absolutely unthinkable that anyone would want to cut Social Security benefits or benefits for disabled veterans. And what we have got to do in this, Tom, and as the ranking member, it was recently announced that I will be the ranking member, the leader of the minority on the Budget Committee, so it's going to give me a pretty good place to make this fight. But I am determined to do everything that I can, not only to prevent cuts to Social Security and Medicare, but to strengthen those programs. And in terms of Social Security, I think we all know what has got to happen, and that is you lift the cap. Right now, if you're making $1 million a year or $10 million a year, you're putting into the Social Security Trust Fund the same amount of money as somebody making $117,000. So if you lift that cap, and even if you start at $250,000 a year, what you can do is extend the life of Social Security for many decades. Right now, Social Security can pay out every benefit for the next 19 years, but we want to extend it well beyond that, and you can expand benefits as well. And when so many seniors are struggling as to whether or not they are able to buy the medicine they need or heat their homes or buy the food they need, that is exactly what we have to do. But to be successful on that, it's not going to be done with inside the Beltway negotiations. The only way we beat these guys is when we rally millions of Americans who say, guess what, you are not going to cut Social Security and you're not going to cut Medicare. So we're going to be working hard in that area as well.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders will be taking your calls for the rest of the hour, so get ready. And by the way, you can check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And you can also sign up for Bernie's newsletter, the Bernie Buzz, over at sanders.senate.gov. Check it out. And welcome back. Senator, all set for calls?
Let's do it.
Okay, Jim in Lockport, Illinois, watching Free Speech TV on Direct TV. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Senator Sanders, how are you?
Great. How are you, Jim?
I'd like to go back to that omnibus bill that they passed. What is it going to take for the American people to wake up and really see how the Republican Party is just tearing the middle class apart? It's just to me, it just baffles me the way they go about it, and people just keep going along with it. We got to get people out there to vote. It's just unbelievable.
Well, Jim, thanks for your call. And you asked a very important question. I think, obviously, I was very disappointed in the results of the election, where the Republicans won a significant victory and are now going to take over the Senate. But what disappointed me, it should disappoint everybody and upset everybody, is not just Republican victory, but that 63% of the American people did not vote in that election. Some 80% of young people, the future of the country, did not vote in that election. And 75-80% of low-income workers did not vote in this election. So the question really is, what kind of democracy are we when vast majority of people don't vote, and especially the future of the country don't vote? And I think that speaks to a significant demoralization on the part of the American people in terms of believing that democracy works for them, that government works for them rather than for the big money and the special interests. And that is the essence of the issue. It's a catch-22. If we can show the government can do good things for working families, people will vote. But if government does not do that, people will not vote. So we need to work extremely hard to create a grassroots movement which demands that Congress does the right things for working people. And that is an endeavor that I've been involved in for years, and we will continue to push. So that's kind of where we are. People have got to stand up and fight back and make it clear to Washington that government must work for the middle class and working families of this country and not just for the billionaires and multinational corporations.
Ron in Fairhaven, Vermont. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
We're receiving an enormous amount of advertising in our mailbox. Do you know, Bernie, if the very low rates for mailing advertising being subsidized by our first-class rates? Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. The issue of the Postal Service is something we have been very, very heavily involved in. My impression is that the Postal Service makes money doing that.
Third-class mail does make them a profit.
And, I want to see them make a profit. And, what may be junk mail to one person may be the opportunity to get a coupon and save some money for another person. So, but we have worked very, very hard on postal issues. I worry very much about slowdown in mail delivery service and the shutting down of some 82 processing plants and the shrinking of the labor force of the Postal Service by 15,000 workers. So we're working as hard as we can to try to make sure that the Postal Service gets the revenue they need in order to do high-quality work.
We'll be right back with more Senator Bernie Sanders right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting with Senator Bernie Sanders, taking your calls. Rick in Tampa, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hi. This is Rick from Tampa, Florida. My question for Senator Sanders is, when can we expect you to formally announce that you are going to run for president in 2016?
Hey, Rick, thanks very much for the question and for your support. This is a huge decision, and if I do it, it has to be done well. It has to be a campaign designed to win. And when you were a candidate taking on every special interest in this country, and the Koch brothers and the oil companies and the military-industrial complex and Wall Street and the drug companies, you're taking on the real power in America. And I will not do it unless I have the sense that there is the grassroots support, not only people who are prepared to vote for me, but people prepared to engage in an almost unprecedented grassroots movement. I just came back from Iowa, and I spoke at a couple of groups in Iowa, and I got to tell you, there was a lot of support there, and I felt very good about the meetings that we had. Large turnouts, a lot of enthusiasm. But, we have time to make that decision, and I've got to make the right decision, and it's not just for me. It's not just my ego that says I want to do it well. if I run, I'll be carrying the banner of millions of people who want government to work for the middle class, who believe that health care is a right of all people, who want to see millions of new jobs being created, rebuilding our infrastructure, believe in pay equity, who want to address climate change, all of those issues. And if it's not done well, all of those causes suffer a setback. If it's done well, then we gain on that. I happen to believe there is real anger in this country at what's happening to working families and the fact that 95% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Is there the will, Rick? Is there the will of people to stand up and take on the billionaire class? Is there that will? And the answer is, at this moment, I don't know. And I'm working as hard as I can to try to ascertain whether there is that kind of desire and willingness on the part of the American people to stand up. So if I do it, it has to be done well. I don't want to do it poorly, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Jeff in Elkton, Maryland. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Hope you have a nice holiday. I have a question that's related to the filibuster. Everybody knew that the writers were in this bill, and I was trying to figure out why, if the Senate knew about these writers in there, where was the consensus on a filibuster? I mean, where was it at? I mean, apparently people, or the Democrats on my party, didn't want to filibuster that, and I'm trying to figure out how many people does it really take to filibuster? Is it just one or a group that can do that? And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you very much.
To answer your question, it can be one, it can be a group. I was on the floor a few years ago protesting against an agreement that President Obama reached with the Republicans, maintaining a lot of Bush's tax breaks for the rich, and I was on the floor for 8.5 hours. One can go on the floor for 10 hours, 20 hours, whatever, and other people can come on as well. But be clear, and I think sometimes people are not clear about this. If you filibuster, what you do is primarily call attention to the issue, and that may very well be a good thing to do. I was on the floor. I did not filibuster. I was on the floor on several occasions calling attention to this. Others were as well, especially this outrageous provision which rescinds taxpayer protection against Wall Street speculation. But what it would have done is delayed the vote for 10 or 12 hours or 14 hours. It would have maybe focused more attention on it. But I think, by and large, most Americans know what was in that bill by now, and that it was, in my view, a bill that should not have been passed.
Rudy in Riverside, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hi, Senator Sanders. Are there any progressive Republicans in the House or the Senate that would organize with the progressive Democrats to pass progressive legislation as a coalition or form a third party? And are you and other Democrats going to tell the people about the poison pill that the Republicans put into this spending legislation?
Well, Rudy, to answer your first part of your question, are there any Republicans prepared to work with progressive Democrats in the House or the Senate? I'm not all that familiar with the House, but in the Senate, I really cannot think of any. I may be wrong, but I cannot think of any senators who come close to want to work with progressives on any significant issue. I think that, and in terms of the poison bill and the appropriations bill, I think we discussed that already, and some of us have discussed that a whole lot. In terms of where we are right now, I think that the goal has got to be to make sure that the President of the United States tells the Republicans very loudly and clearly that if they want to cut Social Security, they want to cut Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection, whatever, that the President will veto that legislation. And if he vetoes that legislation, I am very confident that both in the House and the Senate, or either in the House or the Senate, we will be able to sustain that veto, and that legislation will not get through. So I think it is clear Republicans won a victory in November. We've got to figure out ways to work together. I think one way we can work together, some Republicans have talked for years about the need to pay attention to our crumbling infrastructure. and that's hopefully a bipartisan issue that we can work together on. There are some Republicans, Mitt Romney among others, who have talked about the need to raise the minimum wage. I hope there are some Republicans in Congress who are sympathetic. There are some Republicans who talk about equal rights for women in terms of fair pay. And I hope we can work with pay equity. But there are areas that we can work together. But mostly I think the president has got to make it clear that he will not support legislation which attacks the needs of working families.
It's Brunch with Bernie here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our hour-long town hall meeting, national town hall meeting with Senator Sanders. We'll be back with more of your questions for Bernie right after this. Welcome back to the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person or Hobby Lobby or anybody else? No, we say here on the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls, and you're with us, Senator, right?
I am right here.
Okay, great. Tom in Temecula, California. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's an honor to speak to the both of you, and I think that I speak for many of your listeners when I say you're both the national treasures. I have an idea that's so crazy it might be genius, but I would like, because of the Electoral College, Bernie would need to belong to a party to become president, so I suggest that he runs as a Republican. Talking heads at Fox would explode. All the independents would cross over, like myself, and vote for you. Re-register all of the Democrats as Republicans during the primaries to make sure you get there. They certainly need your history on perspective, and you could court the Tea Party with the unequal taxes and the big government equals corporate welfare and bank bailouts and those kind of things that they appeal to. And once you're elected, you should make Tom your domestic policy advisor.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, Tom, that's a pretty crazy idea. You're right. Well, here's what I think. What is not crazy, Tom, is that, and I think you are making this point, despite media analysis to the contrary, on some of the major issues facing this country, there is a lot more commonality of thought than many believe. You know, I'm not going to tell you that on issues like gun control or gay marriage or abortion, etc., that on those issues the country is not divided. It is divided, and that's the way it is. But on the basic economic issues, your point about many of these Tea Party folks, especially the working class Tea Party members, they're as angry as everybody else is, and they're angry for the right reason. I'll tell you a funny story. Some years ago, I was on Fox TV, and somehow or another I was able to really talk about some of the issues that I wanted to talk about. And one of the issues I talked about was trade and the horrendous impact that NAFTA and CAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China and other unfettered free trade agreements have had on American workers. You know, we've lost some 60,000 factories in this country since 2001, millions of decent-paying jobs, and not all of it, but a lot of it is attributable to our disastrous trade policies. And when I got back to my office, you know, the machines were lighting up with all of these Fox calls who said, you know, I don't agree with you on a lot of issues, but you're right on this trade issue. And there are other issues out there. I think many of our conservative friends were not sympathetic to the bailout of Wall Street, etc. So the challenge that we face on economic issues is how we bring people together where there is common belief and common interest. A poll came out a while ago asking Tea Party people whether they thought there should be cuts in Social Security. Overwhelmingly, they said no. So what our job is to reach out, not to the corporate wing of the Republican Party. You know, they have their agenda, which is to give more tax breaks to the rich and cut programs for working families and support unfettered free trade, but to working class conservatives who I think we can make common alliance with, not on all issues, but on many issues.
Dan in Atlanta, Georgia. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Happy, healthy holiday to you and your family, Senator and Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie, I wanted to get your thoughts about the recent announcement by Governor Shumlin that they're canceling the single-payer plan in Vermont, which I feel is a travesty, not just for your state, but for the country, because this, was the foundation for what should be going on here in the United States. I mean, the talk that they're saying, well, the taxes would increase so much, and to that, my response is well, of course, because
right,
paid for.
Thank you for the question, Dan. Obviously, I talked to the governor the other day. He gave me a ring to tell me what he was going to say, and you're right. It is very, very disappointing because it has been my hope, and it is my hope, that Vermont will lead the country into a single-payer healthcare system and, by example, have a profound impact on the nation. I think what the governor concluded at this particular point is that the kind of tax increases that would be required would be too high politically or economically, financially, to be sustainable at this moment. But let me just tell you, Dan, that that fight is not going to be given up, not if I have anything to say for it. The current healthcare system is dysfunctional in so many respects. We have 40 million people who have no health insurance today, despite the modest gains of the Affordable Care Act, millions more of high premiums and high deductibles. We remain the only country in the industrialized world, as you know, that does not guarantee health care to all people, and yet we end up spending almost twice as much per capita on health care as any other nation, and our health care outcomes are not particularly good. So we're going to go back to the drawing board. I will be meeting with the governor and with the healthcare advocates here in the state of Vermont to figure out where we go from here. But what I want to tell you, Dan, is that fight is far from over. We're going to continue the fight. Single payer is the direction that we have got to go as a state and, in my view, as a nation.
John in Elmwood Park, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders, John. John?
Senator Sanders, I thank you for all you do for veterans and the middle class. I really hope you run for president. Things are pretty crazy right now politically. Obama's going for the TPP, and who would have ever thought that? But I think you can win as president. You might have to go against Hillary, but maybe you'll raise enough issues where she can pick you as VP, worst case scenario. But that'll be your legacy if you run for president, so I hope you do it. My question to you is, what's being done to audit the Federal Reserve? And my question is, Tom talks about failed Reaganomics, and he's 100% right that Reaganomics has failed, and it should have died in 2008. But the Federal Reserve has been printing money and doing 0% interest and all these federal gimmicks to prop up, the wealthy. So my question is, what's being done to audit the Fed? I know there's something going on with Rand Paul on the other side about auditing the Fed, so I'm wondering if you have any plans to get audit the Fed legislation through.
Well, what you should know, John, is, and I'm pretty proud of this, is part of the Dodd-Frank financial regulation bill, I got an amendment in which, for the first time in the history of the United States of America, did audit the Fed, but only, and the compromise we had to make to get it in, was only during the financial crisis. And what we learned was incredibly revelatory. We learned that the Fed, and we would not have known this without the provision that I got in, lent out in a revolving loan fund, so money coming in, money going out, some $16 trillion to virtually every major financial institution in the United States and central banks all over the world, and a number of major American corporations at almost zero interest loans, zero interest or very, very low interest loans. And the lesson that we learn from that knowledge is that when the Fed felt it appropriate, they could do some rather remarkable things. They wanted to save the Wall Street folks. They lent out unbelievable sums of money. And yet when it comes to small businesses or families that have kids in college, apparently we can't do the same thing for them. So the issue of auditing the Fed is alive and well. I worked with Congressman Ron Paul when he was in the House. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we got something. And I will continue to work on significant Fed reform. A lot of issues in the Fed, not least of which is that we still have the banking community dominating the Fed, and we want to, there's such an obvious conflict of interest. We want to get rid of the bankers on the regional Feds, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we're going to stay on that issue.
Faith in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi. I just want to understand more clearly. Thank you for taking my call, first of all, and it's an honor to talk to both of you guys. The pensions that you're talking about in the spending bill, whose pensions exactly are they? I mean, my husband and I are on a fixed income, and we both receive a pension for a number of years now. Is it people who haven't taken their pensions yet that are still paying in? And I just want to understand it.
Okay, Faith, I will give you. Sorry, I don't have the paper in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak here. But what we are talking about are multi-employer pension funds that have been established by companies working together, along with unions, to establish pension funds. I believe there are about 1,400 of them. Some of them, within the next several decades, are not going to be able to pay out what was promised to their workers. So you have about 1,400 plans, and some of them, several hundred, I believe, within the next several years, the next several decades, will not be able to pay out all of the benefits owed to the people in the plan. What this legislation did, and I think that was absolutely wrong, is create a situation where some of these multi-employer funds could, in some cases, significantly reduce the pensions that people are already receiving, as well as future pensions. So to answer your question, yes, it does apply in some cases to people who are already receiving pensions. I think what was excluded from that are people, if my memory is correct, over 75 years of age. So the oldest people would not be impacted. But people under 75 could receive cuts, and in some cases, pretty significant cuts.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, our national town hall meeting. Check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. We'll be right back with your calls for Bernie.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And at sanders.senate.gov, you can sign up for the Bernie Buzz, Bernie's newsletter, and over on Facebook, you can find a very active Bernie Sanders site. And welcome back. Dan, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV in Tell City, Indiana. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello. I was wondering why you can't, Republicans always put these riders in these bills. Why can't you put get creative and put a rider in there for Glass-Steagall and reinstate it? Let's call it Warren Sanders, and not just in one bill, but just continually put it in somewhere every month.
Well, Dan, I think that's exactly right, and that is, something that I have very much in the back of my mind to attempt to do. We have got to address this power of Wall Street and the greed of Wall Street and the ability of Wall Street to make risky investments that the taxpayers of this country are going to have to, bail them out when they're wrong. Those are issues, and putting in riders is something that is exactly what I have in mind.
Mike in Haines City, Florida, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Mike? Mike is watching his TV instead of listening to his telephone. Paul in South Lyon, Michigan, watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, Senator. Thanks for another year of great work. Partly blaming the Democrats for this piece of crap budget is like blaming a husband who pays ransom to get his wife back for the kidnapping. If the Democrats had voted against this budget, it would have played right into the Republicans' hands. The government would shut down, and hundreds of thousands of jobs would be destroyed, exactly what the Republicans want. And since the Republicans now control the entire Congress and the media, the Democrats would get all the blame. Isn't that true, Senator? And can you imagine the budget we would have gotten in January?
Well, Paul, you raise fair questions, and this becomes a contentious and difficult debate. I think with the Republicans controlling the House and being extremely aggressive, we know that in the past they have been prepared and did shut down the government. we know that come March or April or May or June, they may be prepared to have the United States, for the first time in the history of our country, not pay the money that we owe and maybe plunge the entire world into a great financial crisis. They are very, very aggressive folks. But there comes a point, and you got to look at every case as it comes down the road. But there comes a point where I think Democrats have got to say, no, we just can't go down that path. And if you guys want to take responsibility for shutting down the government, if you want to plunge this world into a financial crisis, well, you have to take that responsibility. But we are not going to continue to vote for things which are devastating to working families or just another boondoggle for Wall Street. So, Paul, I think your point is a fair point, and it's worthy of a lot of discussion. But my own view is that the other side of the story, from what you're laying out, is that people say, okay, the Democrats voted for this giveaway to Wall Street. Democrats voted to cut pensions. What the hell is the difference between the two parties? Why am I going to vote? So all of this stuff is tough stuff. There is no easy answer to it. But I think we've got to be a little bit more thoughtful and think this thing through in a way that we haven't in the past.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back more of Senator Sanders right after this. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour with Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls. And Paul in Woodinville, Washington, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom. Best of the season to both of you.
You too.
Thank you.
Senator, I wanted to ask you, do you think when, if ever, will the United States Congress return to normal budgetary procedures? I mean, the Republicans seem to be crowing the fact that this bill leaves spending cuts at sequester levels. But it seems to me that is sort of like saying I want to lose weight, but I don't care if I lose fat or muscle or bone or organ tissue or brain tissue. I just want to lose weight. That's not a healthy way to live, and I don't think that's a healthy way to govern. We still have billions in bloated military spending, which has absolutely no value-added benefit to the American people. Yet they want to make cuts to things that do have value-added benefit to the American people. Yet, and all of these other things, deregulations all crammed into one bill with no debate. This is what would be called cake-istocratic, and then that's Kissingerese for the worst way to govern.
Well, Paul, I couldn't agree with you more. It is a horrendous way to govern. Major provisions in legislation which have not been seriously debated or where there are hearings on. But, Paul, I want you to take a look at what's going on in Congress, maybe from another perspective, and to understand that, sadly, and I say this with a great deal of sadness, but it is the truth, it is an illusion to believe that the Congress today, especially the Republicans, come anywhere close in their policies to representing where the American people are at. They get funded very, very heavily by the Koch brothers and by large corporations and wealthy individuals. And their agenda is primarily the agenda of those people. What we have got to understand is the Republican agenda is an agenda of tax breaks for the wealthy and large corporations, and what you saw, and a tax on working families. And what you saw in the last appropriations bill that we just voted on last week, what I voted against, is just that, encapsulated in one bill, a major break for Wall Street, forcing taxpayers to pick them up when they lose money, and an attack on working families in the ability now of pensions for a whole lot of workers to be cut significantly. So you're not talking about a rational process. You're not talking about a process in which government is representing ordinary people. You're talking about a process in which the United States Congress represents the wealthy and the powerful. And that's the agenda that you're seeing. And it's a sad state of affairs. And it's not going to change. It will not change until there's a political revolution in this country, where you will have folks going to Washington and saying, you know what my constituents tell me is we need a jobs program to put people back to work, not more boondoggles for Wall Street. We need tax breaks. We don't need tax breaks for the rich and large corporations. What we need is raising the minimum wage. So, you're going to need a Congress that starts reflecting the needs of the American people, not just big money interests.
Okay. Michael in Stillwater, New Jersey. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Bernie, thank you, and Tom, for taking the call. My question is more procedural in the sense that all these riders and amendments that are stuck onto the CRS and the omnibus bills and the like we don't know who sponsored them, so to speak. How is it that we can get the Senate or the Congress, and I know you can speak from the Senate, on a procedural level to make sure that these bonds, these bills, or these amendments or riders have a name attached to them, and who's going to sign on to it, so there's some sort of accountability relative to who are actually sponsoring these things?
Your point is well taken, and that is something that I and I think many of us will be working on. The danger, and it's, believe me, not a new idea, it's gone on for many, many years, is that very significant pieces of legislation get stuck in big bills and nobody knows anything about them. And we've got to do our best to prevent that from happening. By the way, Tom, I think I misspoke a few moments ago. The chairman of the new chairman of the Budget Committee is a Republican, is Tom Price. I think I said David Price, who was also a congressman from North Carolina. David is a Democrat. He is not going to be the chairman of the committee by any means, but it is Tom Price who will be the chairman. I misspoke on that.
That's quite all right. We have just a minute and a half left, Senator.
All right, let me wrap it up. We got a lot of very good questions. I think people are concerned about the process that goes on in Washington. People are concerned that what goes on in Congress is reflective of the needs of major campaign contributors and big money interests. And the only way I know, to be very frank with you, to fight back is when people are organized, when they are vocal, when they're prepared to speak out, when they are prepared to get on the telephone, and make it clear to their members of Congress, Senate, and the House that they know what's going on, that they are not going to tolerate more legislation designed to protect the 1% or more legislation designed to hurt working families. And let me be very clear. This is what is, Tom, you and I talked about this months ago, and now it's shaping up. This is exactly what the Republican agenda is, and everybody should be aware of it. They want to go after Social Security one way or the other. They want to cut Social Security. We can beat them if we organize and make it clear that we know what's going on. They want to end Medicare as we know it. They want to give more tax breaks to the wealthy and large corporations. They want to cut back on education, nutrition, environmental protection, affordable housing. That is their agenda. And we can beat them. But the only way we beat them is when the American people speak up and say, sorry, that is not what we want. You got to represent us and not just the billionaire class.
Senator, thanks so much for being with us again this week, today.
All right, my pleasure.
Great talking to you. We'll be back right after this.